This is a quick video tutorial of the way in which we'll use Git and GitHub this semester. I'll walk through the assignment submission process following the Git and GitHub workflow that is available on our course website and our GitHub organization under Lecture 02. You may find it useful to follow along with that document as you watch this video. To start, I've opened GitHub Desktop and logged in with my github.com username and password. I also have, on my desktop, an R notebook file that I wish to submit into my assignments repository. That assignments repository, as of right now, is only available on github.com. Our first task is to take that remote repository and clone it onto our local computer. To clone a repository, we'll start from the main window of GitHub. When you have no local repos, GitHub Desktop looks like this. We'll select Clone a Repository, which will bring up a pop-up window that will present the repositories available to be cloned. We'll select our assignments repository, in this case named Snow Assignments for the famous 19th century epidemiologist and geographer. We can also control where the repository is cloned to. By default, GitHub Desktop will save repositories in a GitHub directory located in your Documents folder. This is true in both Mac OS and Windows. We can click Choose to bring up our computer's file system. This will look different if you're using Windows, but functionally the process will be the same. For simplicity, I'll clone the repo onto my desktop. I select Desktop from the dialog and then Open. When I'm ready, I click the blue Clone button. You'll see that the assignments repository's local copy now resides right there on my desktop. If I open it, I'll be presented with the system of subdirectories needed for this semester. Since my hypothetical assignment here is the second lecture prep, I'll select the lecture preps folder followed by the LP02 folder. Then I'll drag my assignment file into that LP02 folder. Keep in mind that you should be saving files by default right into your assignments repository for most assignments this semester, so you shouldn't have to drag them from anywhere else on your computer. With the file saved in LP02, I'll close my Finder window, and when I activate GitHub Desktop again, I see that the change has been registered. It automatically recognizes that a file has been added to the repository. To submit this file, I want to add a commit message into the summary field. You can optionally add more detail into the description. When you're ready, click Commit to Master. This produces the snapshot of your work, but it does not send it to github.com. To do that, you will need to push your changes. Along the top of the window, there's a large button that will say Push Origin anytime there are commits on your local repository that have yet to be pushed to the remote. Click that button and your changes will be pushed to GitHub servers. Once the icon stops spinning, you should be able to go to github.com and see your changes reflected there. You can also select the History tab for any repository to see the timeline of commits you've made. Selecting a single commit will allow you to visualize how each file in the repository changed at that snapshot. I've now opened up our R notebook in our studio to illustrate what happens when you make some changes to a file that is already in a Git repo. We'll make a simple change, just a single sentence of narrative added to the project setup section of the notebook that clarifies the purpose of that part of the notebook. This follows the basic principles of literate programming, which we also introduced in week 2. When I save the notebook, it will automatically knit an HTML file that can be used to preview the markdown formatting we're using. When we reactivate the GitHub Desktop window, we can now see that 2 changes have been detected. The HTML notebook has been added. We see the raw HTML code and not the pretty rendered HTML you would see if you opened your browser. And we see the single sentence we added to the notebook itself. We'll add another commit message in the summary field and click Commit to Master once again. We can click Push Origin to push those changes up to github.com. If changes are made to the remote and we want to update our local copy, we can click Fetch Origin. If the button changes to read Pull Origin, that means there are remote changes available to be pulled into our local copy. We can see that our remote is one commit ahead of our local copy. We'll click on Pull Origin and let it download. When the button changes back to Fetch Origin, we can click on the History tab and open the latest commit. We can see that a change was made to the README file where the 4 in the course number was deleted and a 5 was added in its place. Once we have at least one repository cloned, GitHub Desktop will always reopen the last repo we've worked on. To add additional repositories, we'll need to go to the File menu instead of the button in the main window we used for the first clone. Select Clone Repository from the File menu, and you'll be able to clone any additional repos you have access to. The File menu will look just a bit different on Windows, but there will be a similar Clone Repository menu item for you to select.